Well, higher education has been identified as a key sector in accelerating economic growth, but of the students enrolled in tertiary education, 15 to 20% do not graduate. Lack of finance and steep tuition fees have been cited as just some of the reasons contributing to the low graduation rates that we're seeing. Totsie Memela-Khambula, who's CEO of Eduloan and Sihle Moon, CEO of the Services Sector Education and Training Authority, join us now in studio to unpack the situation we face in South Africa a little bit more. Thank you both for joining us in studio this morning. Totsie, let's start off with you perhaps. I mean, we've got tertiary tuition fees in South Africa relatively high in relation to, the average income per household. But we've also got quite a few steps being made by the Finance Ministry itself in terms of trying to alleviate the situation. We've had a 0.3% cut from the budgets of other departments in the 2012 budget and raised 6 million rand, the amount allocated to the Minister of Higher Education for FET colleges and for student financial aid. Is this a step in the right direction?
I'm extremely amazed at what our government has done in terms of ensuring that funding towards higher education actually is provided. There's been huge growth over the past 3 to 5 years, and I think Sihle is best placed to talk about what has happened on the FET side. Just for this year, 5.6 billion has been allocated for higher education, which is funding that is required for all those that are going to both FETs and to universities. What we find when it comes to issue of access is divided in two areas. It's access to information and access to funding. And when it comes to funding, there's three broad areas where one can find funding. You find funding that is provided for the lower end of the market, which government has done a great job. And the middle market is where we as Eduloan has operated over the past 17 years. And on the top end, you find that it's people that can go to banks because they have a good credit record, they have access to finance, they don't have a challenge in terms of accessing finance. The issue of access to information is another huge aspect that we need to also address, because in many instances, if you're in a rural area, not only do you have a challenge in getting access to what funding is available, but also just access to information, which university you can go to, what the funding, the requirements are for the fees and things like those. So both issues need to be addressed, not just the funding aspect.
Before we bring Sihle into this conversation, I mean, obviously all of this has a direct impact on the enrollment rates for tertiary education. To what extent has cost been a factor?
I think costs are a factor, but again, we must understand that it's costs that are related to all the other issues that are related to cost. We talk about cost of food, the issue of food security is becoming a bit of a challenge. So costs are a general aspect that is affecting all of our populations worldwide. And education becomes also one of the major issues that become affected. So costs are an issue, but it's an issue that is affected like all other areas.
Okay, let's Sihle, bring you into the equation in terms of your view on the current scenario, the kind of graduates that we're seeing enter the South African workforce when they do make it out there, because a lot of questions are being made or centered around the kind of skill set we're actually putting out there.
Indeed, it has been a problem for a long time. But I think there is now increasing recognition that we should be speaking less of higher education, more post-school education. In other words, what are you prepared for? And in what ways does your training prepare you for the South African economy so that we train you for work? Now, our government has taken a firm stand to place FET, public FET colleges at the center of this drive to profile vocational education, to profile practical skills, so that we train young people less for the prestige of the degrees and more for the workplace.
What's been
and
the
for the
challenge
economy.
in actually getting this right?
It's the perception. The mindset is all wrong, not just with the learners and the parents, but with society generally. There's a view that university education is more prestigious, which it probably is, but very often it doesn't really give you the jobs. Very often it doesn't really respond to the socioeconomic needs of the country.
Yeah, and that of course exacerbating a fear that's out there that we've got a loan or credit bubble that's blowing up within the education space or the student space specifically. I mean, Totsie, what's your interpretation of this? Because already you've got, students put in debt before they enter the workforce and then not necessarily guaranteed a job when they're out there because they don't have the skill set that's actually required.
Our approach to how we've done funding over the years has been different, and one could argue that it also culminates in also certain people that are not employed at all not being able to access our loans. But again, we've had to make sure that we manage the risk for the customer and ensure that the customer doesn't have the bubble that we currently experience.
How do you manage that risk?
Our loans, you take a loan, our loans are like pay as you go. So we engage with employers and government and indicate to them about the importance of education, with education being actually an employee benefit, just like medical aid, just like pension, because once you've educated yourself as an individual that's employed in terms of upgrading your skills, it therefore gives you an opportunity to engage in the economy even better. But over and above that, it actually gives you, as you're funding for your children, an ability to create a better life for your children and not end up having your kids having these huge debts. When they finish your university, they end up with huge debts that they did not really anticipate. So we would provide you a loan, you would pay for the fees for this year. If you can't finish them within 12 months, would give you an allowance for up to 22 months whereby you can pay for the school fees. And then the following year, once you've exhausted that, if you still have the ability to pay, we can give you additional funding, but make sure that by the time you complete, to a large extent, the bulk of the funding has already been paid for, so that you don't encounter the bubble that you encounter. It's only recent that we've actually started piloting a situation whereby we can allow people to pay interest only, but again, that we're going to be very cautious in terms of how we do those kinds of loans, because we don't want to over-indebt students so that they start their future with a challenge.
Sihle, what's your reading of these financial models that are put on the table for students, given the fact that, you know, we're still looking at a workforce that's finding it very challenging to get jobs out there? From your experience in terms of where they're getting placed and how they would be able to cater or, you know, service these loans moving forward?
Look, our view is that unless industry is at the center of what we're doing here, we're not going to succeed. We've just signed an MOU with an institution in Blackburn, the UK. And what we want to learn from them, because they have the most incredible relationship with industry, where even their curriculum is determined by needs of industry in the Manchester area. We're looking for a model where business industry is at the center of this, so that as the young people graduate, because you see now we're focusing a lot of attention on FET colleges, many of them in outlying rural areas. And you see these colleges have been in existence for a long time, and they churn out certificates every year. Problem we have, the certificates are very often not helpful. They don't respond to the immediate socioeconomic needs of the areas. So we're looking at a situation where even before the learners start the FET college, we sort of have a sense where they are going, because industry has determined what the needs are, what will be required in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, so that there is a smooth almost process from entering the FET college into the workplace for training, experiential training, and maybe retraining and so on and so forth. It's something we don't have that many other countries do have. So it is our desire to get the balance right between the FETs, industry, and the government, the Department of Higher Education and Training.